All right, welcome everybody. This week we're going to talk about implementing dynamic menus in Business Catalyst. I am not aware of any news that I can announce. Let me think about that for a sec. I apologize. Normally I'm good about remembering to look that stuff up. So is anyone else aware of any news? So the only update I have is on BC Academy. There is going to be a release for enabling liquid objects by Chad Smith. We talked about that last week, and that is going to come through here. So there are no updates for the App Store, and there are no updates for the BC Guru side of things at this point. Sorry, I've just got my iPad for monitoring here, and it's speaking to me. All right, so back to implementing dynamic menus. So when I talk about dynamic menus, we're talking about the menu functionality in Business Catalyst. Oh boy, I'm logged out of everything by the looks of it. So when you go to Site Manager, Menus, and we don't have any menus in the Sandpile site, of course. Just give me a second here. My little iPad here is not behaving. All right, let's try that. So this is the area I'm talking about, dynamic menus. This particular site doesn't have any menus on it, but that's what we're talking about when we're talking about dynamic menus. Yeah, supposedly, Bill, they fixed that, but it was actually worse today than it's ever been for me. So the whole getting logged out. So I thought I'd go through and show you some of the standard stuff that we're using, some of the kind of the default template files that we use for outputting menus, and then show you some of the things that we've done, that I've done, and show you what's possible with that. Sorry, my iPad is distracting. I'm just going to close it up. I usually have it on there just so I can make sure my screen is showing the way I expect it to and all the rest of that, but the sound was coming out making me crazy. So we have a file here we put under module templates, menu, and we call it default.tpl. So we're using almost exclusively liquid logic for outputting our menus. I would imagine folks are doing it that way now, maybe not. They're still in there, the children, the container, and the group, but we just found that way less efficient than using these liquid layouts. This one in particular is taken almost verbatim from the Adobe's developer documentation, and then we customize it as we need to. There's a couple of ways you can go here. In this particular case, we leave the UL within the liquid, within the TPL file, and then we have a liquid for loop within that. And from there, we grab the CSS if there is any, we grab the target frame if there is any. That's what all these if statements are for. So it's not outputting things that aren't necessary. It doesn't output target equals if you haven't chosen the target in the menu and such. And we're set up for 3 levels. We call it M, and then S, and then T. So you can get 3 layers deep. If you need more, you can do more. I've certainly done that, but you shouldn't necessarily need to. And then that gets called. Now, this is not usual, so maybe that's not the best place to show you that. Sorry. That would just normally get called. I guess I'll just show you here. So I would call that by outputting the menu ID, and in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, and collection equals, and the template equals main menu, and then default.tpl. So that's this file here. So if I had a menu called 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I can throw it into a collection called main menu, and it would use that template to output it, and that would give me a UL with all my links output as I was expecting them to be. So that's the most common use that we use anyway for outputting main menus. Now we also have another TPL file called single level TPL. And in that case, instead of having the multiple levels, we just have the one level, M equals. And that would most often be used for, say, utility menus. It would be used perhaps in a footer, perhaps in a sub-footer down where the copyright is and that kind of thing. So let me look at the notes there. So Mark asks, how can I change the mobile hamburger menu graphic from 3 bars to 3 bars with the word menu at the bottom? That is dependent on the framework that you're using, Mark. Foundation would be different than Bootstrap, would be different than Skeleton, would be whatever. But you can either do it with CSS with a pseudo element, or you may be able just to add it and then absolutely position it, if you like. That's the way I would go about that. So again, single level is largely used for utility menus. So you can see here, I have a utility menu, and this is a variable. I've set this up at the top here. So assign the utility menu, assign the main menu. In the case of this particular template, I'm outputting the menu in a couple different ways, one for mobile, one for screen. So it was simpler just to set the ID at the top and then drop my variable in here rather than hard coding the ID of the menu. But you can see I throw it in a collection called utility menu, and then the template is blah, 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 single dash level dot mobile TPL. And that is the fashion shop template, which is this one. So that is what, that's what's outputting this main menu, and then the utility menu across the top. That's what that little bit of code is doing. Does that make sense? Is that a surprise to anybody, or are people using that, not using that? So Mary says, Mary Blight says, she did not have menu version 2 and did not realize it, so she developed her own method of using UL lists in a content holder and styling them with CSS. So she's interested to see if you can use them again after this tutorial. Paul's not using Liquid. Barbara is not using Liquid. Jeremiah has used both, but more often than not, he's using Liquid. So maybe what I will do is I'll drop this default TPL with the module code that calls it and the single level. I'll drop those into a resources file that you can download on this meeting parameter. Once I put the recording here, there'll be a resources, and I'll put those I'll put that code there for you so you can maybe start to use it. Now sometimes if I need to get a little bit fancier, you see how I have the UL here and I have a bunch of classes, large horizontal menu, data close on click inside. These are template specific things. So in this case, I needed to have the UL outside of the loop, and that's why I've got a template of module templates menu main dash nav dash TPL. So all you'll find if you go there really is I've taken this UL out of that in this particular case. So what this gives us, so why would I bother doing that? Well, it gives us a lot more flexibility. So this may look complicated. There's a lot of if statements here. Like if I was to take out, that's whether or not you've added a class to the LI. This is whether or not you've added a target frame. So you see if I get rid of those, this is really straightforward. That's your link. And then this is if there's submenu items. So it's not that difficult, other than there's a lot of if statements there to not output code if you don't need it, not output the class statement with the classes if you haven't entered any classes. So hopefully that makes sense. So this main-nav.tpl, so you can see I got rid of the UL, and I have some things like data close on click inside equals true, and I've added a class of vertical menu nested to this particular submenu. So that's why I've got a separate main-nav. This navigation was a bit more complicated, and that's what I needed to achieve what I was after. There's some in the middle, some in the right. There's a utility menu at the top, and when I get down to the hamburger, you can see I'm outputting these items here. and they're now suddenly in a row. They're not offset. Like these ones are in the middle and this one is not. So I needed more control over it. So therefore I've set up my own TPL file. So Mary asks, can you style sub menus as well? Yes. If I go back to this default, here's the main level, here's the sub menu, and here's the sub menu. So in this case, I have the UL that's outside of that. That's the first level. This is the second level, and you can see I have some classes on there. This is the third level, and I also have some classes and some data attributes on that. They happen to be the same, but yes, you can absolutely do that. And in fact, I can go to a fourth level or a fifth level if needed. You have to know how to do it, but you basically just copy this. You copy from about here to here, if s.items. So now you're going to go through T, and you'd have if t.items, and you'd go down to the next level. Hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, you can see here I've got the utility menu. I'm putting it out once there. I'm also putting it out here, and that's why I put these variables at the top of my template-header.include so that I can easily change them if need be. And this is for a BC Guru's template as well. So I wanted to make it easy for you if you've got you replicated this site and you need to update these items. They're right at the top where they're easy to find for you. You don't have to go digging through the code to find those menu IDs. Now here's an example of a single menu level mobile. What do I do with that? Yeah, so in this case, I wanted to add a class, hide for large. So that is how I get these items here. I have a hide for large class. So I wanted them all in a row. If you looked at the inspect the element on this, you'll see a UL with all these LIs beneath it. They're not two separate ULs. So I get by that by having this hide for large on there. And that's what keeps it from showing up here to the right-hand side of this menu, because I've got a separate menu in this case on the desktop, because this needs to be centered, this needed to be off to the right, and the logo needed to be off to the left according to the design spec. Okay, hopefully that makes sense. This is a template footer. So here you can see I've repeatedly used this single level TPL. So I assign the menu ID. This is the about menu. I insert that variable there. It's again, so it's easy for you to change. I make a collection, and then I output it with this single level TPL. Then I change the menu to the account menu, and I do the same thing using the same template file. Then I do the same thing with the social menu. In this case, I use social.tpl, and you may ask why I do that. And there it is, I have it open. So I do that because I use the class differently. So instead of the class applying to the LI like it does here, so you can see in this case, this class is part of that LI. But when I get to the social, I want that class to be part of an I that's within the A tag. So here is the A tag. That's it completely. And I want these icons. And so basically, when you set up that menu, maybe I should log in here and show you. So under normal conditions, if you apply a class to a menu item, you want it on the LI tag. So that's when you've clicked assign your own class and you enter your class in there, or your ID for that matter. Under normal conditions, that would go in the LI tag, not in the A tag. But in the case of social, this is a common practice, is I assign my own CSS, and in this case, we're using Font Awesome. So I throw the Font Awesome -Twitter in there, and that is how I get in the footer here. Where is that's how I'm getting this icon in front of the word Facebook, in front of the word Twitter. So using Font Awesome. I'm not sure what I did there. I went to Twitter apparently. So hopefully that makes sense. Let me just break it down a little bit here. So here's the A, the I. Here's the LI. And it looks like somehow I must have duplicated it by mistake. So here's the A tag with the the I reference inside of it. So this I tag that outputs that little Facebook icon or little Twitter icon. And there's some ARIA hidden stuff and all the rest of that. And if parameters.location equals off canvas, I want a square icon. Otherwise, I don't want a square icon. So there's some control over that. But this is the key here. There's m.css. So when you enter something here, fa.twitter, that's what gets dropped in here, and that's what puts that icon in there. And then I just remembered I did this. When you get down to the mobile view, what the hell have I done now? So that should be outputting a square dash square icon. So I don't know why it's not doing that. Maybe I changed something somewhere else. Yeah, it's not that's not working. So I must have done something somewhere or misspoke. Social.tpl, that is social, so it should actually be doing it. In any case, I mean, forget about this. Oh, that's why it's not off canvas. Yeah, sorry. Now I remember why. That's a different thing. I think that goes up here. Nope. All right, leave it be, Dave. So let me get rid of this so it's not as confusing. So I have a class of font awesome, and then I'm dropping in the class that you've put here, and that's how I get in the footer this icon. Hopefully that makes sense. Yeah, Mariette or Jeremiah, I think I does refer to icon. You have to be a little careful because Business Catalyst likes to change that to EM. Although it hasn't happened to me in a while, so maybe they've put a fix in for that. Yeah, and that's why I think Business Catalyst was changing it to an EM. You used to record it in Dreamweaver, upload it, and Business Catalyst would help you by changing that to EM like that. But that has not happened in a while, so hopefully that makes sense. Now this was there's a bit of code here which might make it a little tough, but this was a cool thing I figured out how to do here, and I'll just see if I can make this bigger for you. So what this does, I had a use where they wanted to output up to 4, maybe 5, maybe 3, maybe 6. They didn't know how many menu items they wanted, and they didn't care if the header was a link or not, but they just wanted it to be as flexible as possible. So that whole menu is output by this one footer menu. You can see the top says menu, special offers, shipping in my account, menu, special offers, shipping in my account. And I've got some liquid logic here, some liquid code. You can see I've got the module menu call, rendered in a collection. The collection is called footer menus, and I suppress the template. I assign an item count equal to the size of this collection, so however many items are in there, -1. And then I loop through for I in 0 to item count. The first thing I do in the H6 tag is I pull out the index, the first item in that list. Basically, I pull out the first item at that level, and that becomes the header. And then I loop through the sub items, and I output the rest of the menu. So in this way, with this little bit of code here, that's really all I'm using there. And I'm using some foundation stuff, the row and the next small, medium up, 4 up, just to do a column block. But really, with this little bit of code, I'm taking this dynamic menu and outputting it in this way. And if they add a 5th section, so under my account, if they added resources and then put sub items beneath that, that menu would just show up, and there would still be 4 across. It would just come in below. So they could add 5, 6, 7, 8. And of course, you can change that to 3 across or 5 across, whatever you want. But it did allow them to add and remove these menu items as they wanted and change the headings real simply just by updating this dynamic menu. Yeah, I can share that one too. I'm only hesitant because without an explanation, it's not necessarily as obvious what's happening. But I'm happy to share it, and I guess if someone has a question, they can give me a call. But really, all I'm really doing is using Liquid to loop through this dynamic menu, and then just output this layout. And that's kind of the point I wanted to make. It's this Liquid logic, if you can figure it out, is so flexible in what it can let you do. So here's a main menu where I'm adding a class of drop right. So in this particular framework that we use, or the menu that we use in a lot of our sites, you can see here, this page I wasn't concerned about in this particular case, but you see how this menu slides off to the right. And if you're not careful, when you get small, this one shouldn't do it because the menu is fairly small. So you can see how this one comes off to the left once there's not enough room for it on the right anymore. It's that idea. And we use it, here's an example here. So I've got these ones drop with a line to the left, and these ones drop a line to the right. And that's what this code actually does. So I got a collection here called main menu. I set a limit of the length of items in there, however many number of items are in there, -1. And then I say, if I've hit that limit, then add a class of drop right to that menu item. Otherwise, if I'm on the last one, add that class of drop right. And then you can see, right class is dropped in on the LI here. And if I have it, it basically right aligns it and makes the menu expand to the left. So as this screen gets smaller, I'm not pushing these items off to the right-hand side. Hopefully that makes sense. All right, I think I can minimize this. So that's the core there that we're using is the default.tpl and the single level.tpl. The rest is things that we've bastardized, if you will, or we've taken those and customized them or modified them to achieve a certain effect. And I thought it might be useful to show you some of those effects. So this one, you might want to remember using Liquid to control the selected state of a menu item. So this is the chamber template on BC Gurus, and you can see that the blog page, because I'm on the blog, it's called media in this case, it doesn't matter. This is a list of blog posts, and that's selected. Most sites, if you click on a blog post, that selection goes away because it doesn't know anymore that you're within the blog. So this tutorial tells you how to fix that. And the bit of code that you actually use is, let me just find it here, right here. So I assign let me see if I can make that a bit bigger for you. So I assign blog selected equals blank, and then if I'm looking for globals.get.post ID, and that occurs if I'm on a blog post, then I actually get a valid post ID. It's not blank. Then I assign blog selected equals selected. That's the class I want to add to that menu item. And then as I'm looping through the menu items, you can see if i.label contains blog. So if the menu item that it's going to render contains the word blog, which it would in this case, then I want to add that blog selected. And it's going to be equals selected because I'm on a page that has it has a post ID set in the globals. So in that way, people know, even though they're on a specific blog post, that they're still on the blog as far as the menu structure goes. So that's a unique way that we're using, that you can use Liquid to achieve that result. You can use it for things like mega menus. Don't mind so much the slider in this case. I'm not real fussy about it. But this mega menu is built using that same functionality. So because of this particular menu has a specific class, the code goes out, and this is an auction site. It goes out and gets the categories, not the business catalyst categories, but the web app item, I guess the product categories of all lab equipment items, and outputs a menu. All packaging equipment, and outputs a menu. So this mega menu is built dynamically, and it's placed here based on a class that's put on the dynamic menu. When it hits this item, it says, "Oh, you want a mega menu here," and it drops it in. Yeah, Mary, you probably could. Mary asks, "Can you change the color at the top of the other menu items when you are on a specific page?" Yeah, you absolutely could. So that's one way. I mean, the rest of this is a pretty normal menu. You can see the drop right working there. But just to be able to go out and dynamically get this information and drop it in, and the customer doesn't have to worry about this mega menu. All he has to do is make sure on the buy equipment menu, he's got, let me just, you just have to make sure you add a class there. So you see the class at the bottom says has mega menu. So that's what causes that mega menu to show up there. Sorry about that. That's what causes this mega menu to show up, is because it has a class of mega menu. So that's pretty cool. This one was kind of neat. Yeah, I challenge you to give it a go, and maybe you can find a better way than I found. But what this particular client wanted, this polymembrane is one page, and then these are all anchors on that same page. And you'd think it'd be fairly straightforward for me if, I don't know, you probably can't see, it's too small. So when I click on nanofiltration, they wanted the visitor to be taken to the polymeric membranes page and then scroll down to nanofiltration. I'm not sure how this will show. So you can see I'm on the nanofiltration section. And then when I'm on the page, I can still scroll with that menu. So the trick there is getting this to work across pages. Normal behavior is that the browser would load you right on that anchor with no scrolling involved. So you can see that with a little bit of reset. And that's achieved through dynamic menus and a little bit of liquid logic. This is another fairly cool use. So you see we have just a regular menu, that's all fine. But when you hover over this, what we do, this is generated by a dynamic menu. So complete overlay, and then these items show up, and you can click on those and go to the specific pages. If I click on that one, now I have a smaller version. Again, it's all based on dynamic menus and then some liquid logic to make this happen. Any other menu is just a normal menu. Now there's also some, let me go back to here. If you watch this top menu, when I hit a certain point on the page, see how it changes to just those items? And again, that stuff is all output based on a dynamic menu, and then some liquid logic, and yeah, some jQuery and stuff to control it. But the main output, getting all this stuff to look the way I want it to look, is done with dynamic menus. This is a yoga site I worked on, and the trick here is, you see I'm on teacher training, and these are submenu items from here. And I've got them showing up, they wanted them to show up below the banner like that. So pretty cool. Here they're only available there, but once you get to the page, oops, sorry, they show up below. In this case, there's a video. I should go to a different page because that will not show well. So they not only show up here, but they also show up here. And again, this is done with these dynamic menus. The customer only has to enter an item here for 200 hours and link to the page. The liquid logic takes care of this other layout stuff. And this one, I believe we covered. This, I wanted to show you this, this whole drop right thing. So that's some pretty cool stuff that's made possible with dynamic menus. And the reason it's exciting to me is that it's so simple for the end customer to update the menu item. You can go in there, pick the page they want it to link to, and maybe have to give them some instruction around where to put classes. So if they want to add they got YouTube, they want to add LinkedIn here, they'd have to know to add FA-LinkedIn. That's pretty simple instructions to give somebody, and as long as they do that, that icon will just show up and it'll work just fine. So Mark asks, can any BC menu be dynamic, or is it template dependent? This it's not template dependent. It can as long as you've got the right code in place, it can be any dynamic menu. That's they're called dynamic menus. They call them menus for short, but they used to be called dynamic menus. So all this is really doing is outputting it gives you a collection, and by default it outputs a ULLI. You could absolutely change that if you wanted to. Where's my Dreamweaver? I mean, there's no reason you have to output a UL. It just makes sense because that's the most common use case for menuings. But you could put out div tags. You could output, I don't know, you could output paragraphs. You could output really whatever you want, because in this case, you're putting it into a collection, and then you're just going to loop through the collection for I and main menu.items. So while I'm outputting an LI and then subsequently some ULs, this could just as easily be a P. It could just as easily be a div. Hopefully that makes sense, Mark. So the one thing I'd be interested to know, if anybody else is doing this, does anybody use dynamic menus for something other than menu navigation? I kind of thought in my head, anytime you have a list that you want the customer to be able to easily update, whether it needs links or not, this is not a bad UI for someone to be able to go in, reorder. You know, if I decide I want Twitter 1 up, I can just move up, move down. Not a bad way to do it. I don't know if it's the most intuitive, but I just wonder if everyone is using menus or dynamic menus in a different way other than navigation. Yeah, fair enough, Jeremiah. I do tend to try and keep them out of BC as well. I say things like, "What are you an expert in? Like, what's your line of business?" "Oh, well, mine is taking care of websites. So why don't we both try and stick to what we know, and I'll just take care of you." And of course, they pay me for it. But yeah, I thought that might not. I thought there'd be in my head. There's a use case for using a menu structure for other kinds of content, but so that was just kind of this afternoon's thought. So an actual use case eludes me at this point. So it sounds like some folks are still using the original Business Catalyst menu structure, where it's group, container, and child item. And I don't know, I personally found that to be fairly confusing when I went at it. And this liquid, although there is some code there, it just made much more sense to me once I delved into it. I believe you're right, Mary. So Mary asks, with Dynamic Menus version 2, you no longer have to put a width in menu items, and I believe you are correct with that. You use CSS to style it however you like. You can see there's this is the child item, that's the LI. Then you have the container and the group. The group, I believe, is the UL. Yeah. So you have the container. This is what it wants to output. They've got some jQuery that they add for dynamics selected. That's to give you a selected or not selected attribute. They're assigning some div tags and such. Anybody I've seen use these actually ends up taking that stuff out. But this is, you can define what you want the ID to be of your UL, and you can define what you want to be. Let's see, this is the UL. This might be the menu, the div that surrounds the menu. And there's some ugly stuff there, I don't know. The group is just the UL, so if you wanted to, theoretically, you could add a class here. And then the child is the LI. And it's using tags to output. There's your ID. There's your class if you've entered them. Here's the URL, and here's the text that shows. So this default TPL is really not that much different. It's just all in one place. Here's your UL, here's your LI, here's your class. You could add ID in there too if you wanted to. I'm not sure anybody really does that anymore. To have a specific ID against an individual item doesn't make much sense. You have target frame if you're outputting it. It's the same thing. It's just, to me, it's a more modern approach and definitely much more flexible approach, as you saw with some of these wild sites that we're working on there. Anybody try implementing a liquid logic or a liquid based dynamic menu and struggle with that? Oh, Mary, where are you now? Train station again? Yeah, so Barbara says she's been trying to use Liquid with Bootstrap classes and has some struggles with it. Has anybody else done a menu like this in Bootstrap that could offer Barbara some help with that? I don't use Bootstrap myself, so. Mary says he's catching a bus. I always laugh. I always look for Mary to see where she's walking. So does anybody have some success using dynamic menus with Liquid Logic in Bootstrap that Barbara might be able to reach out to for some help? I mean, realistically, I guess from a Liquid perspective, I would take what you're trying to output, code it up without the Liquid, and get it working, and then go back and insert the Liquid tags and kind of reverse engineer it that way. But I mean, an LI is an LI, a UL is a UL. So I don't know that shouldn't be any tougher in Bootstrap, unless Bootstrap is adding some extra classes and stuff you kind of have to figure out how to add in. Yeah, Jeremiah, fair enough. He's had some struggles with multi-level looping on the for loops. So maybe if I get that code, that default .tpl file out into the resources, you could maybe reference that and use that as a starting point, Jeremiah. Yeah, give it a go, Mary. It's the flexibility is just incredible, and there's a bit of a learning curve for sure. But once you got it figured out, yeah, that's how I learned a lot of my stuff, Barbara, is hacking my way through and reaching out to folks for help. I'm fortunate enough to have a few folks that will return my call still. I notice Scott's not on there. I'd make some comment about Scott Reynolds. He still, oddly enough, still takes my phone calls. So I don't know. Maybe the checks are still going through. So Paul says having a challenge showing a different submenu while using a single template. I'm not quite sure what you mean, Paul. Could you just elaborate or just grab the mic and explain it? Do you mean like showing a different submenu based on the page you're on, but all from the same menu? Is that what you mean? So like if I'm on teacher training, well, no, that doesn't make sense because that is the way it works. So I'm not sure I'm quite understanding you, Paul. Yoga folks love these wild layouts. Just imagine trying to code this stuff up. That's why I have no hair left. Jeremiah, so the question is, with the templates coming out in BC Gurus, will we start using Font Awesome 5? I didn't know Font Awesome 5 was out, and there's no reason not to. Oh, there you go. Yeah, so it really is just a matter of downloading and whatever minor changes are needed to get it working. So there's no reason why we couldn't use it. How long has it been out? Do you know? What do you like about it, Jeremiah? What's different? No JavaScript required. Easily style. It's all SVG. Nice. I guess it says there new icons, SVG, ligatures, and tons more. Yeah, I've definitely been using SVG more, and I've been quite happy with it. It's got its challenges in that you have to control the width on some things, but overall, it just gives you such a nicer experience. How is it for changing colors then? If it's SVG, is that baked in? You just apply a class or? Okay, cool. Well, I'll have to investigate. Let's see. Of course, it won't let me make them bigger. So if I look at this, I should be able to change that color. Yeah, that's handy. Oh, I'm still. What do you mean? What do you mean? What do you mean I'm still on 4.7? That's funny. Kill me. Yeah, those are sharp. Those are definitely sharp. I think I saw back here about changing colors. You have solid, regular, light brands. Nice. It just works. Cool. I'll check that out. Thanks for the update on that, Jeremiah. You luck with an example there, Paul? Let me try reading your text again. One challenge I have is showing a different submenu while using a single template. Oh, you should just have to unmute yourself. Or I can unmute you. Yeah, I think you have to turn your mic on. It won't let me unmute you. Oh, there you go. You should go ahead and speak there, Paul. I see your mic's active. Let me stop the screen share here so we can at least see you. I'm not hearing you for some reason. Oh, you look frozen now. Oh, there you go. But if it makes sense, you can do a screen share and just show me, and I'll try and figure it out from that. No, I see your mouth moving, but I still don't hear you.
Right. I think
There you
that's
are.
done it.
Yeah, I
There
got you
we
now.
go. Have we got share screen?
Should be in the bottom of your toolbar there, I think.
Yep. Okay. Great. Just close that down because I was trying to get more bandwidth, but getting there.
That's good, Jeremiah. He says his wife tells him that she's she says all the time that she sees his mouth moving, but can't hear anything. Okay, go ahead.
Can you see my screen now and hear me?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So the way this I've got this currently set up is I've got all these product categories in the nav bar here, and each of these has a submenu on the side, but requires a separate template to drive that. So concrete has these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 categories, subcategories, and if I switch out to
So you want the sidebar to show up differently based on what page you're on, then, right?
wow, this must be the famous Australian bandwidth challenge.
Hmm. I think I know what you mean now, in that you want, if you click on concrete and formwork, the right-hand side sidebar menu has those items. If you click on concrete and repair, there'll be different items there. Is that correct? All right. So assuming that is correct, because he's off somewhere. I'm going to say yes, it is possible. If you look at this site, so when I click on products and services on the security menu, there's those items there. If I click on learn, you can see I have crime statistics, free guides, and blog. I click on packages, I get products and services, learn packages. So it definitely is possible. And I'd have to look to remember how I did it, but so if you shoot me an email, Paul, I'll try and find a little bit of code because it's not that complicated. But whatever this submenu is here is what appears here on the right-hand side. And you don't have to display this submenu, they just choose to. So in your case, you would hide this submenu and then just show this sidebar menu from your side. Does that make sense? Yeah, Penny says she's done it too, so and maybe she's closer to you there. Yeah, Paul, you're just—it's nothing but breaking up on our side here. I don't even get a word out of you there. So All right, so hopefully that answered your question. It definitely is possible. And in fact, that yoga site is much along the same lines. So I've got the one menu in the drop down, but I'm just recreating that same menu based on what page I'm on. That could just as easily be in a sidebar rather than where it is there. So definitely possible, Paul. Just looking up here, I see Jeremiah had another thing. I would assume using globals, you should be able to tell the browser that if you're on a specific page to show X submenu. Yeah, you'd think it's that easy, but it's a little more complicated than that. You don't always have the global variable you think you might have. So sometimes you have to do it based on URL. But so you're generally speaking correct, but there are exceptions to that rule. How's that for vague? Yeah, I wonder if you couldn't use that dynamic menu for something like output and tags here, although, I mean, it's available as a collection. So, nah, just dreaming. All right, we got just a few minutes left here. Does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss or ask, or have me try and come up with a decent answer for? The short answer, Penny, is you don't. I did discover, actually, I just finished a tutorial today that's going to go up on BC Gurus as a free tutorial and on BC Academy. So what she's specifically saying is, I can't even show anymore because I took it out of service. In the action URL of the form, you used to be able to put mail to and drop an email address in there in the subject. I discovered that's no longer working. And I discovered that on the real estate template here. So that's the technique we were using in this particular template. When you got to a property, this form was using that to send an email to this John Doe guy. That no longer works. So I've done a tutorial now that basically you use the autoresponder from this form, and you fake up. You've got a couple of hidden fields here, you'll see. The tutorial goes into it in detail, but you can see I've got his name and his email address here, and that's being submitted as the full name and email address on this form. And then the name that you type in your email address are custom fields. And that's how I get an email to go to John. He gets the autoresponder from this form with this information that this is the property you were looking at and your name and email address. Does that answer your question, Penny? I'm glad, Mary, that it gives you some confidence there to give it a go again and see if you can get what you need. Yeah, thanks, Paul. It just, I don't know, the crocodiles ate your bandwidth or something, but yeah, I'm not sure. It should come out fairly shortly, Penny. If you need help sooner, just reach out to me, but it should come out on both platforms fairly quick, and it really is relatively simple. It's kind of just what I showed you. You use a form, you fake up the name and the email address so that the email address that goes in is the person you want to send it to, and once the form submits, they get the autoresponder. So yeah, damn them Crocs. So I just finished that up this morning, got it all rendered and packaged up and sent to Kristen for BC Gurus, and Greg or Kristen, I think, does BC Academy. So yes, we all are jealous of your office there, Paul. the great outdoors. And of course, it's the middle of summer there. It's winter where I am, but at least it's above zero. So. Middle of summer hell, she says. Yeah, 108 mils of rain. Oh, man. What's happening to this world, eh? Big storms, snowstorms, ice storms, tornadoes. We're in a lot of places to live where you don't have to deal with that stuff. Well, in the last minute, has anybody discovered a new guitar they'd like to tell me about that I could look up? Something cool. Not too weird. Not much for weird. Pedal fiends. Yeah, I'm trying to avoid that, Penny. I'm trying to avoid the whole pedal thing. I'm kind of old school that way, I guess. And I'm thinking if you can't get the sound you want without a pedal. But then I listen to people who use pedals and go, well, that'd be kind of cool to be able to make that sound. I'm wasting time because we're down at 5 o'clock. I'm thinking about a Jazzmaster or a Jaguar from Fender. Kind of that whole P90 technology, and some of the folks I like to listen to. That's what they're picking up. Of course, they're doing well enough. Like Chris Stapleton, he's got one, and he's of course got like a 60s or 70s one because he can. But this is an Ember mug. So I'm a Starbucks fiend, and this has a little heating element in the bottom, and it keeps it at 135 degrees until the battery runs out, and I got to recharge it. But to recharge, I just stick it on a saucer that's sitting right here. It's pretty cool. Not inexpensive, but I drink a lot of coffee, and I drink coffee all day, so it's nice to have it hot all the time. Cool. Well, we're just after 5. I thank you for your time and attention and for your input where you could. I will get this recording rendered out. I'll put those resources into a PDF and make sure they're available for download. And I hope this has helped you maybe make another go at dynamic menus and Liquid Logic and take the next step there. Have a good night, everybody.